Welcome back, everybody. A little update on the car and the progress. Still working on everything. A lot of stuff that had to get done a couple weekends into this, but I haven't even attempted to put the Hydroboost on yet just because there's other things that need to be addressed. Change the header gaskets, just change the oil in it. It's been a while since I did that. And then I had to blast all these brackets for the power steering pump and get the upgraded Sigma power steering pump on. So we got new belts. Had to do some paint work. Obviously you can see that's a little shinier than the rest of the car. Had to do a little paint work because I scratched some stuff, so is what it is. Still got to pull that bracket off, get it blasted, and do the same thing, shoot it with black base and a flat clear. So we'll get that done here pretty soon. Not really worried about it. I can drive it the way it is, but I don't like scratches. That makes me angry. So I did get shorter belts for this, so I have more adjustment. That'll solve this issue that happened here when this engine rolled over into it as I was revving it up pretty high. So I got plenty of those, so don't worry about that. We're going to replace that. So we're going to dive into this thing and get this booster pulled off of here. One thing that we're going to do, I'll show you where your cotter pin is up on your brake pedal. We'll get that taken care of first. I think my flashlight might be dead. However, right up here on the actual brake pedal, right there, little cotter pin, pull that out. This brake pedal has a shaft that sticks through, it's mounted to the brake pedal, and it has a hole in the end for the cotter pin. So you can see way up there, that's your shaft for your vacuum booster. That shaft has to be measured to make sure that everything is the same length, so you have the same brake pedal as you did before. If it's not the same length and it's too short, well, you'll get what I have here, where it's not making contact with the brake light switch, and then as I hit my brakes, the brake lights stay on because it hasn't pushed the pedal far enough back to make contact and shut that off. So that's something that I'm going to address. I literally just noticed that about 2 weekends ago when I was pulling it in the garage and I seen the brake lights shining on the door, and I wasn't in the car anymore. So that was a situation. But it's fairly simple. You'll see on the inside here, these bolts that are up on the firewall that hold the booster on, they are not of equal distance. Like most cars, you'll notice on my Hydroboost system, they are of equal distance. So that becomes an issue, but this kit was designed for our car. So this bolts on to the back of here, which will compensate for the bolt pattern issues that our cars produce. So that will get bolted on. I need to measure the shaft, like I said. This is all adjustable. I can adjust these however I need them to be, lengthwise, and we should be good. Once that's good, I'm not going to really worry about that currently. I've got 6 other cars here I can measure those shafts on, so I really don't care. I'll get the measurements on them and we'll get this thing in. Now, the hardest part about this, I upgraded everything so it's got steel braided hoses. I'm not used to these hoses as I am used to the ones that I made for my radiator for the oil cooler. So these are a little different. They're a little harder to see, but if I can get it to focus, there we go. For 2 seconds it focused. Inside this steel braided hose is a nylon hose. So that nylon hose has a little adapter. This piece slides over the end of the steel braided, okay? Stay with me here. And then this little tiny brass fitting slides inside the steel braided into that actual nylon hose. So then when you're done, it slides all the way to the bottom. There's a little lip inside here. Slides all the way to the bottom. Then you take this, you slide that all the way on. They said use a bench, a vice grip, and just push it all the way in. Once that's in, then you will slide this back up. Obviously cut these to fit where you need them, you know, before you do that. And then you will tighten this up and it makes the hose. They say leave a thick fingernail gap between this brass fitting and the actual shaft. Otherwise you'll crush this internal piece and then you'll cause problems and it'll start to leak. So I don't want to do that. I'm not looking forward to this, but I need to get that on first so I can see where the shafts are. The banjo fittings do come pre-made, so these will just slide right over these. These tighten up. You get a washer between each side and taken care of. Fairly simple. Now, some of this stuff, you've got extra fittings and stuff here for depending on what you're trying to do. This is for the return line, the non-pressure line. So I don't really like how they have that set up. I'm not too excited about that, so I may end up changing that. I may end up going to get a different shaft if I have to, something more of a 90. I'm not sure yet. We'll see how it all turns out, but I've got plenty of different connections here that I can try to do what I want within the system and make it fit the car. One other upgrade I'm going to do, and this is kind of the surprise that I had for you guys, is this is going to turn into a serpentine belt kit on the front. I've got some fading here on some of this dress-up kit that I'm going to do. I'm going to replace all that. This is a replacement radiator that I got with plastic tubings, not like the brass copper ones like we had back in the day. This actually cooled this 455 really well, but if it gets over 100 degrees outside, ambient temperature, it starts to kind of not really overheat, but just gets hot. So I couldn't drive it in a parade if I wanted. I'd be a little scared to do that. So one of the things I'm going to do is upgrade this. This will be part 4 probably. I've got a cold case radiator system here. This is a direct bolt in. It's not a 4-core, but it's super thick, and it's aluminum. It's I think it's double fins, and it comes with electric fans, fan shroud, 12-inch fans to go on, and then with my setup, it's designed to fit in our cars with factory engines. So it should fit in here just fine because most of the stuff is factory. And then it's got oil coolers just like our factory ones do. So we should be able to just bolt this in, and then this will all be exposed. And I hate that because what are you supposed to do with all that space? I guess you can stand inside there and work on it. But, I mean, it's probably going to come out to here, so there'll be some space and some gap between there. I'm going to end up putting powder-coated black serpentine kit on this. That'll be down the road. But meantime, we'll pull the cotter pin inside underneath the dash. We pull off our bolts here and our bolts here. Since I'm leaving my factory bolt brake system, excuse me, on the car, I'm just going to take this, slide it off to the side. No big deal. We're good to go. I shouldn't have any issues with bleeding the brakes. I'm literally just replacing the booster here. So I've already disconnected my vacuum line that goes up to the carburetor. I'll plug that at the carburetor here later, and then you'll pull these bolts off on the firewall. One thing that I did was I disconnected all of my windshield wiper harness, and I just laid it up on top of the wheel well tub. I did take out my windshield jug just for the simple fact that it seemed like it was going to be in my way, and it was ever so slightly in my way. So got that taken care of. That gives you some room to get your hand back here and get to these other 2 bolts that are on the top. These are all loose. I just have to unbolt or pull that clip inside to the shaft, and then we should be ready to pop this thing off of here and see how this new Hydroboost system will fit on here. And let me pull that pin quick, and that whole thing will literally just slide right out. All right, so real quick, I want to show you guys your factory setup. So here's your original style booster, all bolted in, exactly the same. There's your shaft, goes into your brake pedal. You're going to have an extra bracket that holds these brake lines to the master cylinder, bolted on with a 1/2-inch nut that goes right into the backing spacer on this thing. So you are going to have to get that off. It's going to prevent you. As you can see, I don't have a hood or anything on this, so it made things very, very easy to pull this out. But I'm going to use this as my measurement to double check to see what my shaft length needs to be in there, because that's an all thread, and I'm probably going to have to cut it down a little bit. All right, zoom out just a bit here so you can see. I've got the original booster off of another car that's sitting in the yard. That's what's nice when you have multiple parts cars. You can just go grab one. Because we modified this, and I ended up doing a couple tack welds to hold everything together, and this pedal was so hard because there wasn't enough vacuum in this canister to make my brakes work properly, I ended up bending the shaft a little bit. So I'm not even going to do any measurements off of that. I'm going to use my original style and go from there. Now on this one, just like with anything, they have the bolt pattern on here. So what I ended up doing initially with that is I took my original housing, ground off the aluminum rivets, and I welded it in there. Now, of course, I sandblasted it and I painted it, so it's all ready to go. Now, I did say earlier that these brackets come to fit, and they do. You'll see that this would fit up just perfectly with that. However, it took me 11 months to get this, and they sent me the incorrect bracket for this side. So, because this is already off of that booster, or my original booster, I'm just going to install this on here, and it'll have the factory housing. And then what I will do is I will measure from the base portion of this housing to the top of the shaft up here, and I'll just do the same thing here. Now you can see this one that came with it is quite long, so it'll need to be cut down. It'll probably end up getting cut right about there. So you just take a hacksaw, cut right between the teeth, take a little file off the end so it'll thread back on. Fairly simple. I've also got a tap and die set here, so I can just thread those on real quick and it'll be done. So we're just going to bolt this directly up and get this thing on here, and then do some measurements, and then I'll measure from the base of this to the top of the shaft, which should be exactly the same as that. It doesn't matter what's inside there. Now, I will show you something that I did a little bit beyond. So this boot actually came off of that housing. So I just pulled the boot off of there, and it actually slides right on to this shaft. I'll put a little RTV gasket maker right around the outside rim, just so it holds on there nice and tight. And then that'll just kind of keep everything clean inside here. Not that dirt and stuff gets up there anyway. But once we bolt all this together, it'll just... I don't know, it'll make me feel better, right? So we're going to get this on, get it installed, get the shaft all cut down, and I'll get back to you here. Well, it has been a very long day, filled with a whole bunch of struggles. However, we are pretty darn close. As you can see, you've got the Hydroboost system on. It is bolted up and ready to go. I have not connected it to the brake pedal yet. I am just waiting on this valve cover that I just reinstalled. We got a little bit of clearance issue because of these high rises. Still clears just fine, but I was hoping that that box or that part of the Hydroboost would be on the opposite side. If it was over on this side, then it would be fine, but that's just how it works. The system just worked out like that. So I ran my banjo fitting down here. I got to get the connections onto the back, trim those to size. I ran this one. I think I'll probably run him right inside here because it runs down to those fittings that I put down there. I just put some fittings in there for right now, just so I could kind of see where the hoses and stuff would run. I do need to run a T because there is one hose, well, this hose right here, your return line has to come up to it. So because of that, this pipe that's actually on that hose, or on the power steering pump, is a little bigger than the hoses that they sent. So chances are what I'm going to end up doing is run a rubber line to that, just up to one of these T's, wherever it ends up. Not necessarily the most enthusiastic about that, but it saves me a lot of hassle of trying to get something to fit on there and going and getting different fittings and a whole bunch of stuff. So we're going to make it work, and aside from that, it's looking pretty good. I'm liking how everything's turning out. It definitely does open up that space down there, so I'm going to have to clean up some of the wiring and stuff, clean up this cluster that's down here with all the hoses and brake lines, all that fun stuff. Have to get cleaned up, but I think she'll look good. So once I get that chrome master on there, everything should look pretty darn good. So anyway, I'm going to stop for today, do some more filming tomorrow, and we'll get back to you.